This we're gonna have to pay for.
One word, Susan. Eric.
Take attendance.
Eric.
Yeah, we have Grace Wilkinson remotely and in person, we have Hebert, Bach, Huber, Nyro, Kenor, and West.
Just slipping.
Okay,
70.
I got it.
and Dave Shaw is sitting in and.
I remember.
You could speak up and where's your, even though you're not a member, you could talk and listen.
Thank you.
If you like.
And one correction on the first agenda item, this should be July 17th, not the 21st.
I have a comment on the minutes.
Okay, let's have a motion for approval of the minutes and then can make comments.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
A second.
And we need to put in under the minutes. Let me bring them up. Where it says on committee appointments. Where we voted to delete section 2.16(1)(b). Needs to be explaining that that was Conservancy Lands. Number that we. That's in the description for the Conservancy Lands Committee. So the title for that should be included. We made no change to the membership of Water Resources. We
Move
voted
the
to
request.
change Conservancy Lands Committee.
What, are you reading the current, that Inario moved to request LNO to approve an ordinance change? To delete?
Yes,
And what,
that was Conservancy Land. That ordinance change refers to Conservancy
Yeah,
Lands
I-
membership.
and we're asking them to consider making that change.
No, I'm asking that we put in the minutes that it was the Conservancy Lands Committee.
I'm not.
That particular 2.161(b) refers to the structure of the Conservancy Lands Committee.
Okay,
I would like that to be in the minutes
From last month.
from last month.
so read, I'm sorry to be, we got a long meeting here tonight. Read what you're suggesting that you read.
I need pulled up section 2.161(b).
Oh,
Just,
no, I'm sorry. I take back my question.
it
I'm
just
not
needs
gonna be
to.
able to access the.
Well, you don't need, if Jim's okay, it's just what the title of that is in the city ordinances. So that it's clear it was Conservancy Lands and not Water Resources. And that's all that needs to be changed.
So if we just put in regarding Conservancy Lands Committee.
Yeah,
That's all you're asking.
right.
okay, with that addition, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
I.
Aye.
Minutes are approved.
Is Grace on?
Yes.
I am sorry. For some reason, I'm not getting video, but it's probably because of where I am, not having the internet. So sorry, I am here. Hi.
Okay, we won't be able to count you, but that's fine. Please stay.
Oh, gotta be visible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's have your camera.
I'll work to figure out a way to try to get the camera to work and see if I have the bandwidth to support video.
It turned off.
Yeah.
Can you turn it on?
You are showing as your video is off on our. Oh,
There it went. Nope.
Yep. I'll keep working on it.
Okay. First item of business then is Greenway mixed use. Fees and lieu request.
Yeah, so this is a redevelopment site at John Q. Hammond's and Greenway Boulevard. There's the location map. Site is already undergoing demolition. This is a view of the proposed site, and it will be pretty full of development, I'll call it. They've got two bioretention basins at the south end and plans for green roof.
What would a green roof look like?
You want me to
Hi, I'm Andrew Mears with Vera Baker, the engineer for the project. Green roof would be, there's kind of two different components of it. There's a large turf section. Through the middle, just green space that can be used by tenants, mowed grass essentially. And then there's some other pretty good sized, thicker, larger, more densely packed with perennials and smaller shrubs kind of around the outside. And different configurations of planters.
So what percentage of the roof would be green infrastructure?
I know it's just shy of 7,000 square feet. Don't know if I have the roof area to give you a percentage. I can definitely find that info. Probably pretty quickly.
Nope, there she is.
Yep, we got her.
Present.
Green way to do it, actually. I'm guessing it's maybe 10%. Just as a ballpark.
So what size of rain will it contain?
The roof, the
Mhm.
green roof. I guess are you asking from a peak flow perspective or total water captured?
Like if it's a 1 inch rain, will all that be retained up there?
Um,
When you say retained, you mean never discharged from the roof, just evaporate away?
Well, go into the soil.
Well, you'd hope it go to ET, then that's the reason for.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but that's why I'm asking the clarification.
Is
If I could
to,
interject. I think what you sized for was to meet the county's GI requirement, which is passing a 1/2 inch through green infrastructure.
that's met in both the green roof and the bio basins. I don't know what the breakdown is specifically. That was mostly laid out by the architect and the landscape architect. As to what made sense up there. It's a pretty good portion of the courtyard area.
Do you know if it was modeled the way the county's been directing, that you're just using a reduced curve number essentially?
Correct, yep.
So the green roof is modeled as if it were, you know, a vegetated area, and
Yeah.
there's no retention.
well,
It's just coming through more slowly.
Yeah.
okay, but the plants are going to use some and a lot will be evaporating too. I was just wondering how much before it starts overflowing during a rain.
I don't know if it would be comparable. Do you know what the curve number is? 74 maybe?
That sounds right, yeah.
So it'd be instead of an impervious roof, they're modeling it as if it were a clay vegetated soil.
That does not contribute to any of the recharge numbers.
Right. But it does help with the infiltration just passively.
Yeah.
As evaporation,
Well,
evapotranspiration.
that's a big deal.
Yeah. And how much is going to be grass and how
Starting
much
with
other
water,
perennials?
Maybe it'd just be helpful to pass this around. There's two sheets here. This large area here would be the grassed area. And then
Okay.
all these planters around the outside are the perennials, and then there's some smaller ones.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a lot skinnier, but it is still pretty sizable for the perennials and the shrubs.
The more perennial area, the better infiltration.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. It's all modeled the same because it's
Yeah,
just varying levels, so we're using kind of our most conservative soil thickness for the models, just the.
okay.
Move to accept the fee in lieu of recommendation.
I had a question about the
We
calculation.
seconded, then we can discuss.
I
Yeah.
I'll second.
Thank you.
I just had a question about the calculation of it. So the new impervious area is 25,047 square feet. I'm looking at the table on page 21. That number matches what's in the narrative earlier, but the redevelopment impervious area is about 20,000 square feet shy of that. So of the 70K mentioned earlier. So I'm wondering, is it just that only 50,000 of the 70,000 square feet is going to be impervious?
You're looking at the front end.
Yeah, so page 8 says the proposed site improvements will disturb approximately 110,800 square feet of land. Approximately 70,785 square feet of the disturbance will be redevelopment of existing impervious surface, and there will be approximately 25,047 square feet of new impervious surface. And I'm just wondering how those numbers factor
Sounds like
into.
that needs to be double checked. Lisa.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that is, because I know there's some areas to the west of our site that are off the property treated by a different. Just stormwater restored instead of BMPs. That we're not including in that, but it might have gotten included in that first number. I can double check to make sure that the fee calculation is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the water that runs off from this is going to go into storm sewer and then,
That's their pump.
yeah, Esser.
Yep.
Okay,
And the storm sewer is big enough to handle the 100-year flood?
Yes.
100-year?
Actually, you're right. The basins are sized to detain the 100-year. I do not know if we've calculated downstream capacity for the 100-year.
It's somewhere in there, it says it could flow freely. I can't remember the exact words to Esser's Pond. But I wonder how it's gonna get there.
down the road.
Yeah, if there's bypass, it would be captured. And
So anything over the 10-year flood is gonna go over the road into Esser's Pond.
That's the way
Yes.
our streets are designed, I think.
It sounds about right, but no, it hasn't been analyzed. There was an earlier proposal at this site. Yeah, I was concerned about flood elevations, based on the recent study.
Yeah.
I made that comment and they did lift this building up so that it's protected, per EOR's current.
And they don't have to meet our
They are
flood
meeting,
peak or
they are meeting rate control, yes,
flood peak
yes, peak discharge rate control,
by using Esser Pond.
no, on site.
no, we're using Esser Pond for peak
No,
controls.
I don't think so.
The calculation showed it didn't meet it, so
Yeah,
Oh, well, then that's a problem.
I thought Esser Pond was the regional facility for this property.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Yeah, we're gonna have to revisit this, Andrew.
Yeah.
I thought we had discussed that previously.
No.
We
I don't
confirmed
think
that.
So,
So we pull a motion and move to table it till next month.
Yeah.
I think so.
We'll let the motion make it.
So I'm fine with that. Recommended, but I am confused about, so the table that we're looking at here on page 3 of the report, peak flow, right, under 1.4. Controls post-development, redevelopment. Those numbers are counting for Esser Pond somehow?
No, they're not. They're just showing the outflow of the site to be included in the.
So it just shows the redevelopment and the increase by CFS approximately after construction.
Controls. So controls post-development is the unmanaged numbers.
Yeah, I don't know why the
Why would you?
no control versus control. Well, no, there must be some control leaving the site to go to the pond.
Controls post development,
Yeah. I didn't see
2.2 acres.
The no controls column is a standard that I
Right.
think the county wants shown.
Sure, well, what happened with
Right.
them, but that right-hand column is confusing to me then, if that's not,
Yeah,
if that's not using Esther Pond or Fitty.
It's
Yeah.
not using Esther Pond, no. That is the flows leaving the site after the on-site controls.
So,
where is it
That's the
going?
inflow to Esther's Pond, I assume.
yeah, this is an issue.
So the 10-year peak is not being met. And neither is the.
There's anything above the 5 is.
All right. All right.
Yeah, that was our understanding.
I got you. I'll have to talk to Elliot and look at this again.
So bottom line is, we need to postpone this until next
Sir.
month.
Pardon?
We need to postpone this until next month so that they can
Yeah.
double check the calculations and the assumptions. Okay, then I'm gonna make a substitute motion that we defer this item until our September meeting.
Second.
Yeah, all in favor of postponing this until our next meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you. Thanks, Drew. We'll look at this tomorrow.
Item then is a north basin screening proposal to study on the North Fork.
Yeah,
Yeah, so. We went and met with Town of Springfield at towards the end of June. The group included me, Jim Bog, Hooper, Lisa and Iro, and City Administrator Brian Gavin. And they had gone out and scoped some sites, a couple of town supervisors went out. And they provided a map to us. He had drawn up some watersheds and things like that. And we thought the best course of action would be to have EOR look at this and see if there's any benefit to these pond locations.
So is everybody on our committee aware that EOR did a study before, identified 3 sites? Are those the sites we're looking at still?
They are not.
No,
I'm gonna-
not.
I'm gonna pull up a little PowerPoint that Steve Gaffield prepared. These are the sites that Springfield had recommended. I know this is very difficult to read, but they're all, except for number 5. They are all, this is Schneider Road, so they're all tributary. This goes around Wagner Farms. Here's the digesters. Here's the North Fork coming towards the airport. So part of the issue, I guess, with these locations is that they're all upstream of the airport. And the airport has a lot of storage itself, which might kind of negate benefits that we would see from these facilities, if that makes sense. When Steve did his flood reduction study, the ponds where we got the biggest bang out of were these ponds A and A2, which is not, that joins just downstream of the runway. These were gonna be the most effective. Most of the Springfield stuff that they're suggesting is up in here, except there was one on this finger of the creek. Steve is here. I'm gonna pull up a PDF that he sent me. I'm gonna ask him to talk.
Good evening, folks.
Hey, Steve,
Well, Eric, you summed it up pretty concisely. I can add a little more detail, but and mostly to just answer questions. And Jim, I know you had some water quality questions, so
Yeah.
mostly want to focus on that. But I do have a comparison of these basin locations. Eric, you can advance actually 2 slides because this is just a repeat of what you showed. But I did an approximate comparison of the basins that Supervisor Matt Wright identified, which are the red donuts, versus the ponds that EOR analyzed 4 years ago now. These are basin locations that Gary Huth had identified, called Pond A and A2, and then B and C. And you can see there's certainly similarities. And I think the key takeaway of the COR analysis in 2020, which focused only on flooding, not water quality, was that upstream of the airport, because there's already existing storage, getting additional flood storage had essentially no benefit for the big events because it was essentially inline practices. So redundancy and the benefit of, say, Pond B or C just didn't matter because the water was already detained trying to get under the airport. For smaller events, that could be a different story. You can look at that. But for big floods, you can see the numbers of confluence pond stage benefits circled or highlighted in red, and it was basically nothing for B and C. You could get half a foot to a foot of benefit for this big flood control basin that we evaluated over at Pond A and A2. I think the 5th location that in the town of Springfield that's in question now is on that same tributary. So there's some potential there. But I don't think there's a need for modeling analysis. And what we talked over with Eric is, I think we could do a qualitative comparison of the ponds that we evaluated in terms of the location and their size and storage, and look at the results we got and, give you folks a realistic perspective about what these 5 ponds might do for a big flood. And I think the only one that really is going to have anything measurable is this southernmost pond that Eric pointed out. So I think that's it on flooding. We'd issue this sort of comparison and qualitative opinion for you at Eric's request. But I guess, Eric, anything to add or any questions on flooding?
I'll just say, from my understanding from our meeting, Springfield's interest is they had some roads, town roads flood damage from heavy rains. So they have some interest in these sites also from their own point of view. They had Steve, I never quite got the role of they had an engineer do some calcs, right? They got some curve numbers and they did some delineation of watersheds for these basins.
That engineer is also a town supervisor.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Okay. But they didn't do any real analysis of flow control, right? As far as different.
He had just taken a stab at watershed size and I think a peak flow he gave us.
Yeah. Steve, for these sites, I know their sketch shows kind of a footprint. Would you just, in your analysis, just, realistically maximize whatever storage you can squeeze out of each of those donuts and just see what the numbers come out to be?
Yes. And I'm squinting at Matt Wright's map now. I guess he did not quantify storage in the pond. So yeah,
No.
we would do what you said. You look at the surface area and the topography and compute, an average depth to just get a ballpark of the storage. But, it appears they'd be considerably smaller than the ponds that we evaluated for you folks back in 2020.
they looking at wet ponds or dry ponds?
I don't know. And Eric, I know you said you're assuming these would be dry basins, but I'm not sure if you've gotten any additional information on that or not.
I don't, but that is what I was assuming. You're correct.
I think that's their interest is peak flow.
So it'd be
management.
dry ponds.
Yeah.
And they could farm the land and except during.
Well, they didn't, that's the thing. Steve's study was looking at wide open areas, but they were farmed. I think what the supervisors gave us was definitely tilted towards non-tillable land, so they're in relatively steep, I don't want to say ravines. I haven't looked at any of these sites yet myself, but I'm pretty sure their intent was to not occupy farmland.
So there would be dry ponds and probably not much water quality improvement.
That's what we're asking Steve to look at, I think, is what would be allowed for capture of pollutants. And, the other big thing is whether or not how does this fit in with what Yahara Winds is doing with adaptive management? Can we suggest this to them as a practice?
Would it have to fit in with their practices?
No,
No,
but
but
that could be a potential funding source.
Yeah,
So it could decrease our payments for the fee in lieu of type that we're making right now. It could have a impact on that. Steve and Aaron, my feeling is it's not going to see a lot of impact on flood control because of what the network that the EOR already did. And then we're going to be in a position which I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Talk to Springfield again and say, well, we looked at it, we analyzed it, but thanks, but no thanks, right? And is that going to have bad feelings? Is that going to have any
are they
impact on?
looking for us to provide the funds to construct these ponds?
Well, I mean, first of all, we reached out to them and said, hey, can we cooperate on some projects? What are some ideas?
Is that how it's, I forgot
That's
that.
how it started because of the airport master planning process.
Okay.
Mend fences, repair related.
Yeah.
So we have a transportation group that's looking at basically District 6. And then we have the stormwater group that's working on
Okay,
this.
so we can burn some fences.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if it turns out to be, if we don't get much bang for the buck on either water quality or flood prevention, then, at least we tried.
sure,
Right.
you got reason to say no.
Right.
Right.
But I would certainly not back out of the work we're doing with the town until we can document that
Agreed.
it's just not feasible.
There is one detention aspect related to water quality that, has some potential. And that is reducing peak discharge for smaller events, and possibly reducing stream bank erosion downstream. There could be a sediment reduction benefit of that. And Eric, maybe you just want to advance to the next slide, which talks water quality. Yeah. So what we are proposing to do is just really high level. Does this make any sense to pursue in more detail? Both from pollutant removal, but also just thinking the fees likelihood of getting credit. And you're correct. One of the big issues is dry pond versus wet pond. The Wisconsin DNR is currently working on a draft technical standard to look at giving some TSS reduction credits for dry ponds that are vegetated. So certainly we could talk with DNR and look at the status of that. So there is some hope that dry basins, if constructed properly, could get some credit, but I think we could all guess it's going to be less removal credit than a wet pond would get. But there are literature-based values, among other things, are embedded in this US EPA spreadsheet tool, where you could do a simple analysis of looking at what % of the watershed would these basins capture water from. What's a typical pollutant removal percentage for these areas? And you could get a watershed load reduction. The complicated thing that we don't need to go into a lot of detail, but it's important to remember is there's a big difference between reduction in pollutant load on a field or in a basin in the headwaters and what would actually be the reduction downstream, say at the city of Middleton and Confluence Pond. Because of the transport processes, it can take many years or decades for the full benefit of a pollutant removal upstream to be realized downstream, because sediment is moving and it's stored in floodplains. So it's a little bit like the airport runway storage issue of you could calculate a benefit, a reduction from all these basins. The actual benefit downstream in the short term, at least, would be lower. And one of the things that we're proposing to do is to use the model that we've already built and look at what happens, how much detention is there at small events at the airport. And say if a 1 and 2 year event essentially blow through the culverts under the runway, you'd realize, well, okay, those vents are important for water quality. They don't have much detention, so wouldn't have as big of an impact on delivery. But if those events are really stopped up with a lot of ponding, similar to the flood reduction, you'd say, well, probably a lot of the sediment is already dropping out upstream of the airport, and removing a little bit more upstream is not going to give you much bang for the buck downstream of the city.
Is there some merit that if you do trap more sediment upstream, even though it's the same sediment that would have been trapped in Confluence Pond, it extends the life of Confluence Pond dredging by keeping it
Yeah, that
upstream?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
point at the meeting with the town.
Yeah.
Sure. Are you gonna do, your model is gonna do just the North Fork or the whole watershed?
This would just be the North Fork. And just to clarify, I wouldn't even call what we're doing a model. It'd be calculations based on area literature values, which we'd pull out of the STEPL model, but probably doesn't make sense to even set up the STEPL model and model the individual contributing areas of all the ponds. I mean, we could do it, but I think the real value of STEPL and similar online tools is really the pollutant removal performance of these ponds, and then you look at treated area versus untreated area.
So you're not gonna be able to compare the discharge going into the airport on the North Fork? With these 3 ponds and without?
Warren, I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but
Well, right now you got a model that shows that discharge is going in on the North Fork at Airport Road. And with
Yep.
these study here with 3 ponds, are you gonna be able to see comparison whether discharge is less or not?
no.
Look at the ponds themselves and say they decrease the flow so much at that pond site.
Yeah, so the flow reduction, that would be the comparison with the 2020 study that EOR did, looking
Yeah.
at flood reduction. The water quality, it's very simplistic. It's okay, typical wet pond, 85%, TSS reduction, for example. So you could look at what's the upstream watershed area above this pond, look at all 5 ponds, what fraction of the North Fork watershed is being treated by these ponds. And from there, you could calculate a reduction for the treated areas, prorate that by the untreated watershed areas as a reduction in load. What STEPL and any of these simplistic tools can't do at all is say, well, what's the transport of that sediment downstream, and what reduction would you actually see where you care about it in down at Confluence Pond? If the simplistic analysis shows a small enough reduction, then I think you know enough not to pursue that for a water quality benefit. But if it shows it's fairly sizable, then the next step would be, you know, more sophisticated analysis to be able to calculate that transport and what would you actually realize as the benefit in the city of Middleton. But, you know, this is very high level of, does this make any sense to keep pursuing this and spend money on it or not?
Even not following some of the discussion that regarding back to the quality side, just the quality
Yeah.
side.
Yeah,
If you've got 4 ponds, 5 ponds, and you come up with a number of percent control or pounds control or tons control, why do you need to compare that to the rest of the watershed? We just, in the modeling world, in the DNR's world, that just becomes you've reduced a load by X number of tons or pounds. You don't need to transport it down to the next site, right? Because you're in generalized flow, supposedly.
right. And I guess this is one of my questions for you, because you folks have been dealing with this. What information do you need to get credits from DNR? Because if DNR, if their credit system is simplistic as what you described, Jim, of saying you do something on this farm field or in this headwater tributary and you reduce sediment load by 50%, you get that credit, you know, assuming that that's what the benefit you get downstream at some compliance point, which is not likely
No,
to be true.
We wouldn't be able to take credit unless we entered into an agreement with Springfield for perpetual maintenance.
Yeah.
Of these things.
And okay, yeah, okay.
Contributed, I guess, to the maintenance also.
So when that's all in place, when we build a detention pond by the police station and it gets X tons of sediment out per year, that's the number you take off from your load, right? You don't.
That's
route it.
true, but for most of the things that are going through Confluence Pond, we're not using those. We're just using Confluence as a more efficient
Well, that,
downstream
you can't double count numbers.
facility.
Right.
But I mean, we didn't even bother to calculate some of those. Once we figured out that it was a lower percentage captured than Confluence was getting. And we just treated it as all as, here's what
Yeah,
Confluence
I
is
understand.
doing.
That makes sense. Okay.
I didn't understand that table that you guys sent back and forth about the reach we're talking about. Is that the one we have to worry about?
That's from the TMDL report from 2016. And so that's showing, and those numbers have changed slightly. But that's showing what our performance target is and the performance we were actually getting.
What is reach 62?
Oh, I don't know the numbers, but there's Pheasant Branch, there's direct to Lake
Dorn,
Mendota,
no, sorry.
and there's Dorn or 6 Mile.
52 is Pheasant Branch Creek itself.
So that's everything tributary to Pheasant Branch.
2,880 acres? That's only 4 square miles.
In the city. of
That's
Middleton.
only in the city,
City of
and that
Middleton.
goes back. There's a much larger watershed, but not regulated through city of Middleton. We can't, we're not controlling the upstream loads.
Middleton's
We don't get to
responsible.
take credit for them, even though we capture all of that sediment from Springfield in Confluence Pond. We don't get to use that as part of our production.
What?
So we're already giving Springfield a benefit.
Well,
Springfield doesn't have a
They don't have a
permit.
they don't.
Yeah, okay.
They aren't regulated. So why aren't, okay, it's not part of the MS4 area. I got it.
The numbers on there are so much larger than actually taking place, because that's just because it's not a good model. It's all unmodeled thing. It's not real data.
It was a slam,
Slam, yeah.
so no, it doesn't handle the agriculture.
So it's not really, it's not a real, well, Slam doesn't handle the urban stuff very accurately either, because those numbers are huge.
You mean the percent control numbers or what do you think?
Well, I'm looking at the numbers of tons per year of TSS is 420. And actual measurement per square mile is 94. So it's about 4 times higher than we're actually monitoring.
But you're measuring the 94 is the entire watershed, right? Not just the city of Middleton.
I did it on a CFS per square mile basis. So includes both. So the gauge data, we can't separate it very well.
Right. You just said CFS, I'm sorry.
No,
We
not CFS and
Oh, you said sediment load,
tons.
yeah. But that number,
That's just the inaccuracy of SLAM. SLAM is so much.
well, I'm just trying to decide if the 94, the measured number 94 per square mile, is that right? Is that what you got?
Yeah.
And you took it by 2 point, whatever number square mile Middleton has?
No, that's just a number
Or
Pleasant Branch at Parmenter Street. So it's a mixture.
it's still a number on a per square mile basis.
Right.
And Middleton is how many square miles? Okay, 3 or 4. So now the load 94 times 3 or 4 square miles is 3 times 20, 270. That's well, what? You gotta multiply. You gotta multiply that by the number, how big Middleton's urban area is at Pleasant Branch. To compare to this number, if I'm understanding you correctly, we can talk out of the meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
I guess I'm saying is number one, we've talked about this before. SLAM is not a very accurate model to start with. But it's based on.
it's an urban model.
Right.
I
And
think
why
the
is Dor-
default is like 250 pounds per acre. Per year of sediment. Does that sound right to you?
300 is the number I always use for an average urban square mile.
So what happens when our urban area expands and we make it, does this get updated?
Supposed to.
Yes. At some point in the future, we'll have to update our water quality plan. Yes.
Okay, when the plan gets, we update the urban area then.
Well,
Like Bell Farm and Red Tail, is that be considered part of the urban area?
yeah, that's not included in there. That would be included in the next.
Annual
update.
report.
That's an aside, so we have to concentrate on this. So this basically just an upgrade for water quality. To see if there's any water quality benefits.
Can I ask about page 26 of the packet? It's the wetlands by design screening results for sediment retention. Just wondering what that.
You bet.
How that relates to this activity, this project.
So we thought it was worth pointing out, you know, there's information out here. In fact, we already ran the tool. The city, the town, you know, Harwins. Somebody might be interested in saying, well, geez, building an engineered flood detention basin or sedimentation basin, you know, maybe it doesn't have the benefits necessary to make it worth doing. But many of these sites appear to also be in areas identified as potentially restorable wetlands. And there's a different angle, different potential funding source, where there still might be something beneficial that could be done in the watershed, you know, would provide some sediment and flood storage benefits, but, you know, more of a habitat or a habitat focused project. And because the information is available with that, we'd be sort of nuts not to look at it and at least compare these basin locations with these potentially restorable wetlands, and at least highlight that this is another potential avenue that some interested entity could pursue and opens up some different funding possibilities. And, you know, it would be a different focus, but, you know, we've thought about the idea of wetland restoration in the North Fork, you know, for the last 5 years, thinking about some of these water quantity and quality issues. And you know, maybe there's an opportunity here. We haven't defined what that opportunity is, but that's why we included it.
So is your scope going to have some commentary on potential for wetland restoration benefits?
Sure. I mean, essentially, it'd be,
I don't see it in here. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, we did it. There's maybe a sentence in there, Jim.
Did I miss it?
Um. Yeah.
Yeah, because I like this idea a lot. You know, it's not that the town and the city are gung ho about building ponds.
Oh, it's in there, Steve.
Three B, Jim.
Yep, just saw it.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, this was just an add-on, but I just thought we should point out, you know, there's a different perspective to look at here, and don't know where it would go or who would be interested, but when Nick Hayden and I have talked about it, at the office, we kind of want to kick ourselves in a way because we're saying, oh yeah, these headwater projects don't make any difference here. And, you know, we kind of are preaching, treat watersheds in the headwaters, don't wait till you're downstream. This situation's a little bit different because you've got the airports and all the kind of artificial storage that's there. So when you look at certain things that we've looked at, you'd say, well, you know, because of that storage, these things aren't creating the benefit you want. But in general, there still are a lot of benefits to doing improvements in the headwaters of watersheds. And that sort of led to thinking about this
Not
idea.
to get Yahara Winds involved, because this seems reasonable for them.
I think there's good reason to get them involved.
Who's that?
Yahara Winds,
Yeah, the Clean Lakes Group, the whole thing.
yeah.
Well, after we get some information, yeah. And Steve, do you know enough? I don't know enough about the wetland banking program. Is there any potential of these areas being eligible for benefiting from that program? If you don't know, it's okay.
Yes, in theory. Yeah, yes, in theory, the kind of hesitation in my voice is two things. One is understanding what the current market demand for credits is in
Right.
Dane
Yeah.
County in this watershed. So quick bit of research or checking with DNR would illustrate that. And then the other is the size of projects. And, you know, there's economy of scale with wetland mitigation projects. And, you know, if you're less than 20 acres or so, you know, I don't see sites that small. You know, maybe collectively, if there's 5 sites and they add up to 50 acres, and you kind of treat it as one project, maybe that's different. But you know, there's so many regulatory hoops to jump through in terms of the wetland standards and the hydrology standards for mitigation projects.
Yeah.
You know, it's the economy of scale. So I think I'd be looking for a bigger project, and you know, the people I know who are really focused on looking for sites to invest in, you know, they're looking for that sort of 40 acres plus or minus size. But you know, it's certainly worth a conversation with Josh Brown at DNR about what the potential could be, because as you probably know, there's multiple wetland mitigation funding sources, including I'm trying to remember what DNR calls it, but they've got a program where they use general permit fees that create it's basically an in lieu fee fund, and they can allocate that to projects like this that are restoring wetlands.
So we're looking for a motion to approve like 15,000, is that correct? The 10,000 plus 5,000
And this is coming from TIF funds.
TIF.
well, and I noted the staff recommendation is to amend the proposal to include discussions with Yahara Winds, correct, Eric?
yeah, and I think, Steve, you're planning on that, and it's just not written in your proposal specifically.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a meeting with Yahara Winds is something that would fit into the scope.
Can you
At the
add that in?
15,000?
Writing?
I could add that in and send you a new copy tomorrow, if that's what you'd like.
Well, if you guys end up recommending this proposal, we'll have to turn it into a contract amendment to
Oh,
be
sure.
added at that time, before it goes through finance and council.
Okay, then I guess I'm prepared to make a motion following Eric's memo. I move that we amend the proposal to include discussions with Yahara Winds on whether the potential basins could be incorporated into the adaptive management plans. That's my first motion.
Do you want to add? Yeah, I guess fairly limited. I mean, who is Yahara Winds, right? Is that the county? Is that the DNR? Is that
That's
all the
the-
agencies?
The group of,
Madison, yeah, I assume.
Well, yeah,
it's not the county.
they're managing it.
Well,
What are we talking
I
about?
think Nick Hayden was talking with Kyle Minks, who is a
Yeah.
county employee,
Right.
Mhm.
and I think he was represented as the point man for, you know, these like edge of field kinds of practice.
But Yahara Winds is separate from the
Initiated.
county.
Well, county is carrying out part of that program.
Yeah, we reviewed stuff. that-
I just want to know who's gonna talk to, that's all.
Yeah, I guess once we get the motion approved, and then we'll be able to talk to.
All right, even we say wins, we don't know who wins is exactly, but
Yeah.
okay.
I was under the impression it was an independent farmer organization that works with the county.
That's who we talk to?
That's who I think Yahara Winds,
Okay.
whenever, since I was on Lakes and Watershed,
Yeah.
we would get proposals about Yahara Winds, but it wasn't something the county specifically was doing or funding.
You might be thinking Yahara Pride Farms, which is
Yeah,
the
that might
farmer
be.
group.
Yeah.
Yahara Winds, my understanding, and we've worked with these folks in the past, but this is an effort to look at essentially point non-point trading, even though that's not quite the right lingo, but non-point source approaches to alleviate the need to upgrade wastewater treatment plant
Right.
equipment. So
MSD is the
yeah,
umbrella, the parent
Right,
of the whole.
so
I agree.
I think the contact person would be Kyle Miggs and or somebody like Marty Griffin at MMSD or Kathy Lake.
All right, so the motion is, I'll keep the more wins as they're in the language, Lisa?
I'm just following the staff recommendation in the agenda.
Okay,
So the staff is to approve the proposal to do the study.
My motion is to amend the proposal with the EOR to include discussions with Yahara Winds on whether potential bases
see.
could be incorporated into the adaptive management plans. That's my first motion.
Second.
And I'm assuming since this was in the staff recommendation, the staff knows what they mean by.
that's a big leap, isn't it? So-
The staff recommendation is to approve the study as presented by Steve
Is to
And to amend,
and
amend
do
the EOR contract to include specifically discussions with Yahara Winds.
Is that clear, Eric?
Yeah.
And we have a second.
it was the second.
Grace,
Grace.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Motion's carried. So some of our new members, are you familiar with Yahara Winds and Adaptive Management Program and what we're doing with that?
No,
Sometime when you have a month or two, we'll.
yeah, and the discussion of who and what they are is agenda.
Yes, fair enough. Do we need to, now do we need to recommend approval of the as amended, the agreement, or is that?
Yes, but I have another possible motion, but I'm curious, what about having a meeting with our work group and not just city staff? EOR, like if we wanted to convey the results of whatever the study is, and it's not just us relaying what we heard from EOR, but actually.
After they're finished with their
Yeah.
screening. Steve, are you still here?
I'm still lurking about.
The work group being the town people, Lisa?
Yes,
Is there space in your scope for a meeting with both Middleton and Springfield
So
to discuss the results? of screening
Right.
analysis?
yeah, we wrote it, so a meeting with Middleton, that could be a joint meeting. So I don't know if you're talking about mean, obviously we'd be communicating with you on the results and, have a meeting when you were satisfied with it, but we could, it is in the scope, that meeting, this town of Springfield could be invited to it.
I would have it be a separate meeting.
On an extra meeting.
You're
Yeah,
asking for a separate meeting.
so maybe we
Okay.
amend it as well to include that a second meeting or a meeting specifically with the city and the town. Okay, so I move to amend the EOR contract to include a meeting specifically with the city and the town of Springfield.
The understanding the cost may change a little bit. Okay. With that understanding, I'll make that second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Calling that 6-0.
Pardon?
I'm calling that 6-0.
Yes,
Your name is-
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then my final motion is to recommend to approval of the revised proposal to the Personnel and Finance Committee with funding to come from TIF District number 3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried.
So what gets, okay, sorry, it's out of order, but so what gets referred to the finance committee would be the actual contract as Steve revises it with this language and numbers. That goes to the finance, not,
Not coming back to us first.
Right.
okay.
I don't know if we needed this motion, but your proposal already had the statement was gonna come from TIF.
My agenda item said that, yes.
Yeah. That's why I put it in the motion.
That's where we're funding the rest of that flood study.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Steve.
Good night.
Number 4 then is agreement for adaptive restoration.
Yeah, so we don't have anybody from Adaptive on the call here, but this is a company that Parks Department uses and has used for native vegetation management and planning. They're currently hired to do Conservancy Lands Master Plan right now. So what precipitated this was I was looking for somebody to go into the Tribeca Basin and assess the vegetation and start maintaining it as native vegetation.
What part of Tribeca are you talking about?
The one we built last year that diverts the
Oh,
island estates south towards the creek and away from Graver Pond.
Relatively small area.
Yes. We do these general service agreements with engineers and surveyors. In Public Works, we do it every 2 years. Don's probably familiar with that process. It's just a master services agreement, a general services agreement that allows us to enter into task orders, and it speeds things up. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, is get them into the stable, so to speak, with the rest of our consultants, so that we can ask them for advice and small work items when necessary without having to go through the whole contracting process.
Yeah.
It makes sense, but it's unique that it's coming from the stormwater utility. Is that
Well, it's a
yes,
stormwater
this is
pond.
now this is part of the new path I'm trying to take.
We're trying to get professional people to maintain these ponds, at least the
Yeah.
vegetation in the ponds a little bit, hopefully.
And
more
they are,
robustly.
they are excellent. I
Yeah,
have worked,
I'll vouch for them.
Yes.
what? Yeah, I
Well,
worked
that's a
with,
good idea, but I don't think we ever funded out of stormwater utility before. I know we didn't.
Well, we never-
No,
We never
but-
had the service before, have we?
no,
No, we've never asked for this. I mean, there are all kinds of areas that are conservancy adjacent to stormwater, and that's one of the things trying to bring together.
right.
Um, you know, so the GSA itself is a kind of a boilerplate document that we modified to just, to one, just to be written for adaptive, and two, to allow both Parks Department and Public Works to use that same agreement for these small task orders.
And Parks doesn't already have an agreement like this.
No, Conservancy Lands has an agreement with Adaptive
Well, you've got a contract for this master plan.
For the master.
for the master plan. And they do a significant amount of the burning for the city.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
Parks was interested in kind of getting more in line with the way Public Works is contracting things.
This is one agreement that would cover both of you.
Until January of 26. Then we do another. one.
Yes.
And
But
we'll
what I'm
see
getting at is
multiple task orders out of both groups probably as time goes by.
that it's gonna cover the two departments.
Yes.
That's all I'm checking about.
But you may have a task order for some stormwater facility related task. And Conservancy Lands may have something else for some other area, two separate task orders.
Right, yeah.
Independently going out to these same
Mhm.
company. What is the 400? So for 420, they're gonna develop a master plan?
No, they're just gonna go out and assess the vegetation that sprung up and tell us if it's time to do anything right now. It might be a little too early, you know, but
Mhm.
find general condition, pockets of invasives, yeah, what's the health? How is this doing? Can we mow it? Should we burn it?
That's the first task order under this general services agreement. Is that right?
Right, and in the future, you guys won't be seeing these task orders. It's just gonna be something that's handled by staff.
Okay.
$420 is not much money.
Yeah. Typo at first.
Yeah, I did too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's-
It's probably 2
Must
hours.
not have any overhead.
2 to 3 hours.
They do have. a-
Right, I would agree with that.
That's
It's not a
where
huge
some of it
pond.
would work.
Yeah, they're gonna go out and look
Well,
at
a
it.
couple hours, you know, how many drives are back, you burn an hour, so.
Well, they're here in Middleton all the time.
So you want a motion to, that we approve a general services agreement with Adaptive Restoration
I would
LLC?
make that motion.
Good words on that.
Yeah.
Just done second.
Yeah,
Okay, we have a motion
Back to us.
and for approval and a second, so all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
And then I did ask for an approval of the task order, but that won't be necessary if you don't feel the need to
Get
do
it done.
I don't think
It's
it's
set up to
necessary.
be signed by Brian Gatto.
can I ask the chair to take a 2-minute break?
The next item then is,
We just asked-
what'd you say?
Can I ask the chair to take a 2-minute break?
Sure.
Thanks.
That's the first in 50 years.
Yeah. Everybody's- What, so I don't know, Eric or Richard, if part of what Steve was suggesting or brought, I didn't want to get into it because it's just too wonky. He said, maybe you could look into if we reduce the 1 and 2 year storms downstream from some of these ponds, let's say proposed ponds up in the town. And show lower flows results in lower bank erosion, sediment bank erosion. You could get credit for the lower flow. That'd be a new twist on things to my knowledge. I'm not aware of that being used as a BMP before. I understand stream bank stabilization, I understand the pond settling, but actually saying, well, the 2 year storm used to be X, now it's 1/3 X, and so we have less erosion going on downstream of the structure, and we should get credit for that.
I don't know if we end up getting credit for any of this.
Yeah.
To me, I think we should, I think we should make the case to DNR or try to make the case that this sediment control off of ag lands outside the city still has some. Should have some bearing on our permit rate. Not, supposedly what they would do there is increase our permit to be there, like the city area. That could be the case.
End up being
You don't want that,
net zero
yeah,
or worse.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay, the next item of business then is the Red Tail Ridge outfall. And it's just, I asked us to be on the agenda because Herb Garn and Eric are having some discussion over the past storms. Herb and mine are out there taking pictures and showing that there's a considerable runoff and sediment flowing down the road and going back and forth. I think Eric went out there and actually found out what was taking place and what the solution is.
well, this is a spot that we looked at, long before construction. But up on the screen here, I've got a watershed map that the consultant prepared when we were through all this stuff.
Can we zoom in a little bit on that, please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
So the Red Tail Ridge plat, this is the first phase that's happening right now. This is High Road.
No, that's,
yeah.
Not that high road.
Yeah, this is High Road.
I'm sorry.
Pheasant Branch Road is right here. Town, Middleton is to the south of this, basically. This is Bellefontaine. This is Greenbrier. The point of discharge that we're talking about is right here. And these basins and other basins within the development, is basically this white area. The B area, the blue B area drains to it also, but that's next phase, which is under approval right now.
I think they're breathing.
These
'Cause I've seen it.
pinkish watersheds are off-site and coming through Bell Farm.
Red
Tail
Tail.
Ridge, excuse me. So. Go ahead, Rich, what?
I was out there today and they were excavating, I think, J3
Yeah, they are
and H2.
ready to put those. They're cleaning out sediment that has collected during construction. They're gonna over excavate, I think. Replace with sand. Engineered fill, and then they're gonna plant, but that's a purposeful operation, just a construction sequencing thing. We don't wanna build a massive infiltration basin and then just foul it with construction silt immediately.
But did they have an infiltration for temporarily during construction in place?
No,
They didn't.
There's no requirement for that.
Well, there is a requirement for a stormwater construction plan, right, for stormwater runoff.
right,
And the sediment ordinance calls for that.
but there's a sediment reduction requirement, not infiltration. And I mean, if you think about it, it'd be almost impossible to gain the infiltration while the site is so active.
No, not, shouldn't be infiltration, but to control the sediment runoff, so it
Yes.
doesn't increase runoff, the sediment, which was taking place here.
We're supposed to take care of the sediment loads during construction.
I
Understood.
remember at Bell Farm, they had to detention infiltration basin. They had a basin above that for trapping during construction, a temporary basin.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But here they didn't have that, so during construction,
Well, there's a wet basin in between these two basins that's funneling through, and that's providing sediment control.
but when they're deepening it now, they shouldn't have a problem like they had these last storms.
I got a question
There's
before.
multiple issues with this outlet, I would say.
But my question is, this is all based on certain size storms. Did any of these storms, do we know, exceed that design storm level? And if it did, that's,
No, we're talking
they're
about
not
inch
viable.
and a half rains or even smaller, I think. I don't know the biggest one we got this year.
Yeah.
It was less than a 2-year storm.
So is this an issue of them just not performing properly with their sediment control?
Do you have those pictures that,
Yeah, I saw the pictures that were there of the muddy runoff, and I'm
Right.
just wondering, is it an issue with them not following the requirements? Is it a fluke, or is it someone's not going out and policing it? Or,
Yeah, so-
what's the issue here?
So
We know what the problem is, but
Yeah.
what's causing the problem?
Yeah,
the other issue, is that we don't really have a suitable outlet here. They want to build an outlet for these ponds that is eventually going to be put into a storm sewer beneath a rebuilt high road. We're not there yet.
my God, that's years and years away.
Yeah.
This
That's not gonna happen.
section of the road is not city of Middleton.
No.
It's town of Springfield.
That's why it's not gonna be done for many years.
So the engineer, the developer's engineer at this point is investigating a way to keep this in the ditch and off of High Road. Herb's concern is that there is too much sediment leaving the site, and I can't answer that. It wouldn't surprise me if there is. Construction is a messy process. They've jumped through all the hoops they were supposed to, and it works on paper. I think we've all had enough experience to, it doesn't always work perfectly. We're out there inspecting every week, trying to make sure that these controls are in place, just like on every other site.
And the county's doing that part, right? For the
We
most
hired
part.
the county to do that. One of my technicians is also assigned to it.
Okay,
Rich is doing Bell Farm and Sean Allsrud is doing Red Tail Ridge.
but they had to submit an erosion control plan before they started construction, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So they should have things in place to stop something like this.
Well, it's unclear whether or not this is an issue with some kind of discharge that's exceeding what should be discharged, or if it's just an issue with, we don't have a ditch downstream.
Well, they couldn't have designed their stormwater control based on a ditch that doesn't yet exist downstream, but will, could they? I mean, we
They
wouldn't
didn't.
have,
I
okay.
mean, so this was designed, there's a riprap bowl here that's kind of our last line of protection.
Which,
It
by the
is.
way, is not, if you continue the new concrete path that they've put in, if you continue it, it goes right through there. So that, in fact, I think you can see it on the bottom left picture, right in the middle on the
Yeah.
left-hand side, that's the
You mean
sidewalk.
bike path?
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
right,
it's-
and I think we asked them to stop that short of this whole,
right, but if
Operation.
that, assuming that's gonna continue and connect with the side, or the, it is a sidewalk, it's not a bike path further south, it's gonna go right through that riprap.
right, this is temporary.
Okay.
And won't that bike path be built with the road and
Yes.
the sewer that goes in, which will be, again,
Right.
years down the road? So I see what you're saying there. Again, I don't know if they're meeting the requirements, if they're inspecting it, and the silt fences there, silt fences are historically awful. They never work. And you
Okay.
could put socks in there, but then you just have the socks empty and sand would be all over the damn book.
Well, that's, the basins are serving as sediment control.
But once Red Tail, well, we're gonna have City of Middleton land on each side of the road there. Can't we annex that?
doesn't the road
Well,
become
I
city?
think that's up to the landowner and the pace of development with the property to the south of this.
Up to Red Tail Acres, is what you're saying. Because on the other side of the road is City of Middleton.
Going
Well,
north.
There's
I
one,
think the issue is we don't even want the sediment and water going down the ditch.
I know, but.
Because it going down the ditch and goes into conservancy.
Yeah. That I understand. I'm talking
Right.
about this road getting rebuilt sooner than relying on the town of.
Again, this is definitely,
Springfield.
it's a construction issue.
Yeah, during construction, they shouldn't have this type of erosion, I wouldn't think, from storms of this nature.
You would.
These weren't
think so.
real large storms.
Probably happens, and you can build a house and have the same thing running into the street.
Yeah,
So can I just clarify that, the reconstruction of High Road is right now in the 5-year plan for 2028. And obviously before then, we need to resolve the jurisdiction changes. That will be resolved for all but that one property that's surrounded on all sides by Middleton Ridge.
on the
but the-
west side of the.
Yes, that's the one property that is not under the control of the Ziegler family. And I'm fairly confident that by next year, that property will be annexed into the city.
What about the strip that's town of
That's town of
Middleton?
Middleton,
Yes,
they're still the owners of that.
because they have
the
a
family.
history of the town of Middleton of keeping areas
Yeah.
that are not contiguous. For example, the southeast corner of the Beltline and Gammon Road is town of Middleton land,
I
in the
don't,
middle of
Yeah.
Madison.
I don't know if they'll have anything to say about it, Susan, when that landowner decides to.
Well,
end.
no,
That-
I
that's-
think that's a different piece I'm talking about. This is a
Yeah.
strip between High Road and Pheasant
Which,
Branch.
which I tried to get rid of, but, you know, the owner didn't want it, so. It made no sense for the town to hang on to it, it's so disconnected from the town.
But
But that's-
it's privately held,
that's true,
right?
there's
Land
no
is-
right
It's
to
not
say that.
town land, it's,
It's not town land,
yeah.
Yeah.
but it made sense not to be in the town.
Yeah,
Right. No, I don't think it's gonna be an issue because it's all owned by
Same.
the same person, yeah, or entity.
That road doesn't have much to do with what's happening right now.
Right, right, it's, yeah.
Right, but I was trying to
Yeah.
clarify that looking into the future, High Road will be reconstructed in 2028.
Yeah.
But the immediate issue of what to do about sediment.
Yeah, it really isn't whether it's going down the road or into the ditch, it's still sediments running off the site. And Herb has a picture of the Pheasant Branch Road there.
Right, so Herb,
Do you have that?
and
picture?
Herb, you're on the, I think. Maybe you can feel free to interject, but I'm showing, you know, here's the discharge point again. This water will come down the ditch, enter this ditch, and I believe this is Herb's monitoring location.
On Branch Road, yeah.
You know. All of these plans are not monitored. This is all done on paper. Monitoring is just judged to be much too expensive. You know, I'm not. The issue with this is there's a couple hundred more acres that are coming in between here and here. There's, I don't remember how many acres I stated in one of those emails, that's
I
upstream.
think you said 90.
Okay, 90 acres upstream and maybe 60 in Red Tail that's draining to this. So it would be awfully difficult to come in and say, we don't have a baseline to compare it to. You know, so this is all kind of anecdotal. I have no trouble believing that there is more sediment this year than last year. Partly because of an open construction site, partly because of more rain. But it'd be very hard to pin this all on Red Tail.
Well, the upstream is probably in farmland right now during the summer with corn or soybeans, you hardly get any runoff. And hardly any sediment, I would get. I would
are
assume.
they?
But, okay, so my question is, and I understand what you're saying, Eric, and I agree that you can't. Yeah, it looks bad, it is bad, it's highly turbid, all that stuff. Is there any criteria or a determination that the erosion control plan as designed and approved is no longer meeting those design standards? That's all you can do is say, you said you're gonna build a pond like this with this outlet, blah, 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 this size, this deep, it's no longer there.
Yeah.
Or it's filled in,
And I think
whatever.
they're in compliance with their plan.
As far as
Well,
you
they're
can,
out there grading now because you can see right behind the houses on Pheasant Branch, the graded land.
well, that's what they do. They got it.
Yeah.
So what?
So, but what I'm saying is, do they have the stormwater controls
You're-
around that?
You're saying they're meeting their plan.
What they're doing right now is excavating sediment out of the future infiltration basin. And then they're gonna backfill it, and then they're gonna plant it. And then it's gonna start functioning as it will in the future, as an infiltration basin.
Okay, but I think,
So I think these flows will calm down, I guess. I'm aware of, I think, 3 times where this is spilled out onto High Road.
I'm just remember 2 days ago when I drove by there, right behind the houses on Pheasant Branch, they're grading a lot.
You
They
mean
don't-
the
Which is over on the-
little farmstead acreages on Pheasant Branch Road, the isolated houses.
Yeah, right behind those.
Yeah, they have just started advancing
they're
with the
grading
next
that.
phase.
So this is coming from there.
No, that drains towards Pheasant
East of-
Branch.
Yeah, and
not towards
that
High
just, that started after these events. So I don't think we've yet answered the questions. Is the problem that the temporary stormwater solution was not designed properly? Or was not constructed properly to match the design, or was the design insufficient?
Or third option is, it was designed properly, it's installed properly, the rainfalls exceeded what it was designed to do.
It's been damaged.
I don't think that's the case.
Well, I didn't measure rainfalls.
Well, I did, and Herb did, so, and USGS did, so
Okay,
we didn't get a inch of rain in either one of them. Maybe a little,
Yes, I monitor rainfall here at my house, which is not that far from there. And my concern was that these storms that produced that runoff were less than the 1-year storm. So the 1-year storm is about
1 year, 24 hour,
24 hour, yeah, is about 2.49 inches, I think. And all of these storms that produced the runoff and discharge from that basin were less than that, between 1 to slightly over 2 inches.
so the system should have been designed to contain those runoffs, those
That
rainfalls.
was my concern, yeah.
Uh,
Being less than a 1-year storm, which is even less frequent than the average, or more frequent.
But I get,
We designed this, or they designed this, or we requested they design it for 100% infiltration. Right, but that doesn't necessarily mean
Yeah,
no discharge.
right, that, now you're talking post-construction though, right? I'm talking,
Exactly.
okay, I just want to focus on the construction and erosion control phase. And you're saying it may have been designed for those larger, for the 1 year, 2 year, but because we got offsite rainfall or run on, that may.
No, because we accommodated that offsite runoff.
All right.
Part of it's being diverted right now to not go through these not yet fully constructed infiltration basins.
Okay.
so it's not going through that now, that's the problem.
This could be part of the flow that we're seeing, yeah, sure, and all the flow from High Road, that's not gonna have zero runoff from the road itself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't think we can say anything's been done wrong here based on what we've got. The design of the outlet is like a known problem. And when I moved up here 20 years ago and started working, one of the first things I was doing was working for the town of Springfield, and I looked at this stretch of High Road, and it was a problem then. It was a problem between the town and the city, and well, I don't want to maintain it. You maintain. So there is not a suitable ditch in that section of road.
Well, because didn't the
that's what
city
people are
fill in the
witnessing.
ditch? Didn't the city fill in the ditch with that asphalt path?
That was before. me
Before, yeah,
also.
yeah, it was
It's
before me
not
too.
the same stretch, but.
Right, but it's
A similar issue.
further
So-
south.
Our ordinance does require the developer has some responsibility for downstream,
Stable out.
downstream ditch or stream.
So as a minimum, does our inspector or the county inspector go out there and does he look at all of the silt control, this type of thing on a weekly basis, or,
Yes,
and he gives us a written report that says it's compliant?
we don't get a written report unless there's an issue.
Yep.
Yes,
Uh,
field
And
notes.
no written report.
it's she.
Yep. We get she'll send me a letter of non-compliance, copy of the letter of non-compliance that she provides to the developer.
But you haven't gotten any of those.
We did
Oh, you did?
early on, and we did a red card on them, and we shut them down for 4 or 5 days
Okay,
till they could get their erosion control measures put back in proper order.
so apparently though, recently when these events were occurring. there wasn't
So has it
any
been
Well, that's
inspected
what I'm
recently?
wondering. Was that,
Weekly.
was that before or after the events that?
Would have been before.
And I'll also say that when we issued a stop work order, it wasn't necessarily for the regional facilities. It was more that they had 50 different contractors working on 50 different home sites, and it was more of an issue with compliance on those home sites,
Mm.
which were then silting down into the now public streets and public storm sewers, not for discharges off-site.
Okay.
Correct. But it is monitored, and we do react to the non-compliance orders from the county.
And what would happen if this water, instead of ponding onto High Road, was affecting the new houses that are going up?
Was affecting them.
Well, like going onto those streets, like, this isn't a problem for the developer because it's not
It's
affecting.
downstream from the.
Yeah,
Since
it's
off-
affecting us. Our road.
If there was sediment being deposited on a city street, that's a violation, right? You have to clean it up.
Right.
Like that. But those aren't city streets yet as far as within the development.
No, they
Are they public streets now? Okay.
We clean up sediment from the streets, okay, but when it goes to conservancy, it's you're not cleaning it up, it's just gonna be deposited.
And High Road isn't yet a
Yeah.
city street.
So
And
Right.
has Herb been able to document increased sediment at the monitoring point that you showed on the other map? Herb?
there-
We don't have the results from those samples yet.
Okay,
But visually,
you saw a picture of it and it was really muddy. So-
Total suspended solids that is measured there.
And the county, Herb said, is measuring stage, Herb,
Yes,
so well, you're making discharge measurements also.
yes.
So you will be able to make some estimate of the loads going into the conservancy.
Yes,
but again, those loads, as Eric pointed out, come from a lot more area than just the Red Tail development. Now,
Yeah, I know.
I might,
Yeah.
everybody would say, all that much exposed soil's gotta be a major source.
but what about Bell Farm? Does that sediment make its way over here? Because it doesn't, okay.
Because Graber has
It
not
goes-
discharged
They were fine, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
yet.
Yep.
yeah, usually that stream is spring fed. And I hadn't seen, any sediment like that from previous events
Right.
prior to this construction.
Why did the county decide to put a stage recorder in there because of what you're doing?
Yes, to support the monitoring.
So is there anything that needs to be done or that we can do? Aside from keep monitoring?
I am of the mind to let them finish building the system. It's, reassess. if there's an issue.
What's their timeline for rebuilding? They were talking weeks or months or?
Well, I think the schedule last I talked to the engineer was to plant on September 1st.
So all the water will be diverted into this infiltration basin?
It's not in, I hate calling it infiltration during construction phase.
Well,
I know, he used that word, but
There's two. The basin in the middle is a wet pond, and the ones on either side of it are infiltration basins.
but it's
Will
not-
be infiltration.
will
But
be.
it should be detention basin now.
Yes, and have,
Yeah,
Yeah,
what I called them in that email was a sediment basin or a sediment trap, and the only difference is a size.
you talked in that
Sediment basin.
email that they were already enlarging that. So that's what you're talking about.
They just went in last week, yes, and started to remove the collected sediment, over excavate, put them into service, put them into full service.
they're gonna do that because of this upstream has been stabilized enough to,
That's the
Wow.
idea, that it's stable enough now.
okay.
Okay, so I guess,
You know, there's also a sediment trap here. Right as the ag land enters the site, and this is another sediment basin. They have now opened up this site to build
Apartments.
some.
Sounds of grace. No, it's gotta be hurt.
Anyways. You know, so now we're in a condition where that apartment site is raw. They should be putting in similar situation, they'll dig out those basins and use those as sediment traps. Until the rest of the site's stabilized, and then they'll clean the sediment out of those. Backfill and plant so that they can function as, you know, with their infiltrative component.
is that like H5 you're talking about then?
Maybe getting water from the other
Is that
side.
basin?
No, there will be other.
Well, they must be
basins.
getting some from
Right along
Misty
here.
Valley and
So
so.
before they start, they'll
Yeah.
build that basin first to collect runoff from that.
But this basin is in place. H5
It's in-
basin
it's in place already.
is been there, and if you go out there, it's nice and grassed at this point.
Okay, so I guess nothing more we can do, but you guys are obviously aware of the problem.
Yeah, we're watching it, and you know, our county inspector is good.
But he hasn't gotten back to you about this problem.
Oh, no, we've been in constant contact.
Yeah.
Her name's Casey. Yeah, we've discussed this quite a bit.
Okay. Thanks for providing the information. Next is a budget consideration.
Okay, so you guys looked at this last month, and we've made very few revisions. There were very few comments. The only thing that off the top of my head was changing that Black Earth monitoring down to
1,000.
1,000 instead of 8. Other than that, I think this remains unchanged.
Yeah, I fixed the comma that was in the wrong spot, but that's irrelevant.
Good catch.
So there's, you know, there's two versions, one with referendum passing, one without. Our labor numbers that we had given are still being massaged through the proper channels. So this roughly $200,000 might change a little bit. I would say not materially.
So again, are we just in limbo until after the November election?
Yeah.
Send
Yes.
you the nice information sheets and thank you.
Yeah. That's it. Thank yous.
So if you guys are still okay with it, we'll send them through. If you want to
Nothing else.
prioritize anything, we can make those changes.
not in a position to reprioritize anything.
Yeah.
They've been fine.
Can't exercise futility until you know.
Yeah. Can we talk about the referendum for a second, or is that not allowed in the agenda? You
Well,
mentioned, you said the word.
Because it's part of the budget.
It isn't noticed for the agenda, but it is part of the budget, and I will tell you, we changed the wording last night.
Yeah,
Advice of the city attorney, and, it's clunky,
it's complicated.
very clunky, and,
White.
Yeah.
yeah, but, we did just have a very successful effort by folks to get voters to vote no on something that was very confusingly worded on the ballot. And so, given that experience, I think the Friends
Some-
of Pheasant
simplify
Ranch is
them.
getting up to, translate it.
Should have had the Republicans downtown.
Well, they did. That's the problem. They,
You know,
Not
I
down
never
front,
gave
middle.
any consideration to this, and it probably would have been not possible, but I'm just curious if 3, 4, 5 months ago, could the council have decided to put this on the August
Mhm.
ballot?
Mhm.
We could have.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Something
Why
else.
didn't we?
I think that would have been smart.
I would have, just
That's
hindsight, I'm
like
going,
spilt milk, and I think it's beyond us.
say again?
It's sort of like crying.
Well, yeah, I know.
I
Okay.
gotta move on now.
But something that we need to sell citizens on is if the referendum fails, we have less money for road repairs and other things that Public Works does. If it's passed, we're freeing up a ton of money for Public Works to
Don't say
use.
ton, just say money.
Yeah, right, a lot of money.
Yeah,
For Public Works to use on all
Yeah.
their other
yeah,
things.
yeah, and
And
other agencies, parks and other.
well,
Yeah.
it's coming out of the Public Works.
Like
Stormwater's
this-
coming
like
out of
it's- you're
stormwater,
Right.
out
Right,
of
I
Public
see what you're
Works
saying.
now, so it
I see what you're saying.
technically should free up money
So-
for Public Works. So
It really is kind of a shell game, isn't it, what we're doing?
yes, it is a shell game,
Yeah.
but
People are
citizens,
going to say they asked that question.
I disagree.
No, I don't think that, you're.
You're taking money out of our regular budget and taking out the special funding, and so your other money, it's approved, could be spent for some other ways.
Charging users for the service.
charging users for the service, but they're being charged right now through their property taxes.
Right.
And the total levy always stays the same. So Public Works is gonna have more money to spend if this passes.
If you
'Cause we're
don't-
already
unless you
covering
wanna
it.
reduce.
Susan, don't ever write that on the referendum because it'll confuse me.
I know.
I know.
I know, but the reason why we're doing it should be spelled out, but it's hard to spell it out.
The reason why we're doing it is because the other
Well,
referendum is dead.
But we-
Fair and
This
equitable,
is
water
really
quality.
on our agenda for today.
Yeah.
I do wonder, Eric, can you give us an update? I understand there's possibly a public information meeting on October 2nd.
That's correct. I will want to schedule that for October 2nd. I was gonna say the 3rd, but yeah, 2nd. Is it a Wednesday?
Well, yeah, that's a Wednesday.
What does that mean?
Well,
That means we should have this on our agenda for next time, so we
At,
can compare notes.
Yeah.
September.
City Hall in the evening, we'll have a public information meeting.
Or-
Bill Burns,
Or
for
from-
people who are interested in learning about the referendum.
So you will be the one that
Yeah,
explains it?
unless you want to sign it.
No, no. I want to explain it.
Actively
Oh,
looking
that-
for volunteers.
Doesn't it come with your high salary?
I resigned.
Is that what you need a PowerPoint for to help explain that?
I think I probably will end up with a PowerPoint, yeah. And I'm still in process of finishing off that flyer. We're gonna do a direct mailer.
You move this down to here? This discussion?
Going back to the budget for 1 second,
Yeah, let's
Page-
finish.
page 62. There is, this is the ops budget. It says for program administration and management, this is if the referendum fails, it says 101,709 overhead 2024. that number, is
Yeah.
that the comma that you?
Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
What is the adding staff 2025? What does that mean?
That can probably be deleted, which I
Okay,
think maybe that's a remnant of a comment.
that probably can be deleted.
okay,
Does it-
yeah, because there would be no staff added
Right.
in 2025 if the referendum failed.
That was probably a cut and paste and failure to delete that segment.
Okay. just wanted to-
Okay.
I'll correct that.
So are we ready to move on? Since we can't really take action.
So we need a motion for this, Eric.
Yeah, I think we need a motion just to recommend these with those fixes.
So moved.
Yes.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
I,
I,
Opposed? Motion's approved. So, it's the only other thing,
For a future meeting, it's the last.
future meetings, so
Put the referendum on there somewhere. Public
Yeah,
meeting
next-
Slash
yeah.
referendum.
Yeah.
Next time, and then when are we gonna revisit or look at the fees in lieu? Possibly increasing those, it's been talked about since the
Calculated.
first was on.
I don't know if Eric's gonna have time to look at it.
Yeah, between,
we,
I guess we could talk about it, but we don't be able to do much at a time.
can I get an explanation of, because I'm remembering how angry you guys were when that apartment building was first proposed for on top of, across from the golf course.
yeah, yeah.
And you and Ken especially walked out so irate.
Well, I wasn't irate,
Yes,
annoyed.
annoyed, very annoyed.
Okay. I
Anyway,
don't get irate.
that, I'm wondering if they can't put in the stormwater facilities that are required.
Susan, we are looking for items to add to the agenda, not have a discussion.
Good point.
Well, I would like a discussion on this issue.
Well, then add it to the agenda for
Okay, add it
September.
to the agenda. But I'm trying to explain what I want added is an explanation of if that a proposal comes forward of a building, apartment building, and the water can't be contained on site like it should be, then do we have to grant fees in lieu of, or if it's something that's going to be a disaster because there's no way of containing the water and it just runs off like that one, can it be turned down?
Well, it's up to the city council attorney.
So it sounds
Well,
like
I
a
don't know if
fees,
the city
fees and
council
lieu
knows that.
discussion in general.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Needed to talk about both the level of the fee and whether we should increase it and also what exactly are the requirements?
yeah, and
Or alternatives.
our alternatives, yeah, I think that's the important.
So not the cost of how much money we're getting from fees in lieu of, but what actually applies. Fees in lieu.
We need both.
It was both, actually.
We need both.
Yeah,
I think it's commonly misunderstood.
Mhm,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
And
I had a question even on the first apartment development there, and tell me way about the fees in lieu of, we never got that far.
Yeah, that's gonna be an issue.
But on that one, the fees in lieu was down there, these calculations included fees in lieu of, but then it wasn't allowed.
So again, we're discussing items that are not on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
It is?
Yeah, that part.
It was back to that first item
Okay.
First time.
on that sheet there, he showed.
The only thing we're allowing fees in lieu for is infiltration and recharge. And then it's at the committee's direction as to what kind of recommendation you want to make.
Right, but you need, obviously, there's some disagreement about the peak flow management
That's a
issue.
different issue,
Yeah, you gotta
Right.
get that resolved,
absolutely.
yeah. That's why we tabled it, because
I thought when they made that calculation for $3,000 some dollars for fees in lieu of, it was for recharge, not for infiltration.
That's true. I think that was the one that governs. We only collect the worst of the two.
Okay,
we could have approved that number, but because of this peak flow issue.
Yeah, I know.
we Tabled the whole
Yeah.
thing, okay.
Oh, yeah, so that comes back.
you know, it's a complex thing. If they build an apartment building big enough, you're not gonna get infiltration. So
I know.
that's just essentially what they did.
Well, okay, they said the reason is the soils weren't conducive.
Right across the street, there's an infiltration basin that works fine.
There's a few other issues we're having with infiltration and that plays into it also.
Yeah. I mean, it's better, one of the better infiltration basins, but Fidelity. Right there, it looks really nice, and it never has standing water in that I've ever seen. So it seemed like it works.
Which one was that?
Well, right by Fidelity Investments, right on the corner, right across the street.
Should we
Yes.
wrap this up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we gonna have a chance to talk about, next time or not?
That might be a better October item, because I think with the stormwater or with the public information meeting, we'll have our,
And if-
to focus on.
Yeah.
If you go to October, nothing will happen again for another year.
Not necessarily. Eric will be extra ready in October.
You guys notice I stopped saying like items for September meeting and it's a future meeting.
You can meet with
Okay. I have a to-do list. It's all on there.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Completely overwhelmed.
Okay.
Hence this.
Not
rate control.
So
Yep.
meeting's done.
Yep, we've reached the end of our agenda.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Grace.
Good to see y'all. Look forward to seeing you in person next month. Bye now.
Great.
Somewhere late. All right,